If you ask any strong climber what tools they consider to be the very best to get stronger, their answer may well be something that you've been neglecting if you're anything like me, and could be getting really easy gains from. I'm willing to bet that most pros would mention board climbing in their answer to that question, but I do wonder if boards have suffered from being slightly misunderstood. Anecdotally, I feel like boards get a bad rep in climbing. I feel like they're associated with injury, they're humbling, they're really hard, and I feel like sometimes they're not the most accessible feeling tools to use in the gym.
I think a lot of people think it's super intense, super like hard on your fingers. It's like there's no warming up to it. You just like get into it right away. It's like from the first move in, you're just like in it.
Yeah.
I think that's why people are kind of afraid of it.
It's hella sandbagged. The entire culture of board climbing. I climb on the board probably like twice a week, and I'm very confident in what I am able to do. And then I will open the board, open the app to a V4, and I can't do a single move.
When you walk into a gym and you see someone board climb, it's usually the super strong boulder bros with their shirts off, and so it's pretty intimidating. But I think it could be for anybody. And I also think like the value of a board is that you can kind of train different heights and different levels.
So today I am teaming up with Christian, who is head coach at Sender One Climbing in California, and we are going to be making a case for board climbing. And not just making a case for board climbing, but hopefully breaking down some of the misconceptions and barriers to these amazing training tools. There's going to be some proper try hard, some really good vibes at Mad Rock HQ, and really useful info from Christian, so I hope you enjoy. We're stood in front of this lovely board. This is one of just a few Tension 2 boards in the area, and we have both never climbed on a Tension 2, so today is the day. Later on in the session we're going to meet KJ, a V3 to 4 climber who's just getting back into climbing after a while off, and Christian's going to run through how a climber like KJ, or a beginner climber more generally, might want to approach the board, and then we'll look to me as our intermediate use case, so a V6-ish climber who might approach the board in a different way. But first, let's hear why it is that we should even be bothering with board training.
Using the board is a really useful tool for climbers that have plateaued in the V3 to V6 range. So one of the best things about climbing on a board is the strength and power acquisition that you can get from it. It's the best bang for your buck when it combines both the strength aspect and power aspect. One of the cool things about board climbing too is that the boards never get reset. And so you can come back to these projects. If it's at one gym, it's going to be the same exact layout at a different gym. And then with board climbing, you can also focus on specific strengths and weaknesses that you have, and you can set specifically to moves and skills that you need to work on. Board climbing is really time efficient as well, because like we talked about earlier, you really get the most out of your strength and power out of your session. And typically, if you are board climbing for like half an hour to an hour, you start to feel that strength and power wane pretty fast as compared to climbing on commercial sets. So a lot of it is like power and jumping for moves. The holds are sometimes smaller. You can even steepen the angle and get it to a level that you want it to. So that's one of the best things about the board is you can adjust it, and so you can get that perceived exertion that you're looking for.
So now let's meet KJ to find out what Christian might suggest for a climber in the V2 to 4 range who's maybe just starting out with or getting back into training on the board.
Hey, I'm KJ. I've been climbing for about 6 to 7 years with many breaks in between. And I climb between V3, V4, maybe V5 on a good day.
Tell us a little bit about, have you ever been on a board before and what your experience has been like on one?
I used to climb on the kilter board a little bit, mostly because my friends would do it. And so I don't think it's necessarily been the tool in the gym that I'm like, oh, I need a board. You know, I need a board climb.
When you say you like to climb with your friends, and when they're on the boards, you'll join in on their sessions, that's absolutely one of the best times to jump in on a board because the vibe is right and you can climb with them.
So it's fun, right? Like the vibes are always good, but also I know that it's a little intimidating for me because a lot of my friends are much stronger than I am. And so there is a part of me, or a piece of me that feels like I don't necessarily belong there, or maybe even feelings of like I'm not good enough to be training on a board.
I feel like a lot of people have those same sentiments when they go up to a board. They're looking at it with the very steep angles, small holds, and they're just wondering like, how the heck do people use this thing? How do people climb this thing? One thing that's super cool, as of recently, like a lot of these boards have been evolving in a way that's much more accessible, and it's like a really great tool to use for all levels. How do you feel like you climbed that?
It felt good.
Yeah?
It felt, yeah. I did feel smooth on it. I feel like I would like to do it again.
Cool.
To be more present with it, I feel.
I really like how you mentioned the mental aspect of it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes climbers just go in and they just start climbing, but they're not really focused and in the moment on the movements. So this is a good time for us to acknowledge like, oh, like let's be mentally present for each of the moves, making sure we hit every foothold, every handhold perfectly. Because climbing is like it's a skill sport. So it's almost like shooting a basketball in a hoop, right? You can do it once, but that doesn't mean you perfected the climb. So I like to do the boulder problem a couple times just to make sure that you've learned everything that you could from it. And so if you felt like, this could be subjective, but if you felt like you climbed it perfectly, awesome. If you feel like you could improve on some of the technical aspects of the climb, then do it again, so that you can just clean up certain sections. But yeah, I think a lot of climbers tend to neglect that aspect in their climbing. Once they do a problem, they like never do it again. But I think it's important to build the skill acquisitions and get the most out of you can from a boulder. When KJ brought it to our attention on the first climb as well as this climb, she mentioned having to be more present on the boulders and then having to be more methodical with the footwork. Typically in a commercial gym setting, most of the time you can get away with turning your brain off and just climbing. But on a board, sometimes you do need to be a little bit more in the moment and more methodical, even at the easier levels. So it does get you already on the sharp end where you're thinking, you're focused, and you're not just kind of moving through the motions. So in your case, I think introducing board climbing into your sessions once a week in combination with the gym climbing, I think is going to be great for you with some rest days in between. I would climb especially if you're starting to get back into the roll of things, like no more than like 45 minutes to an hour. Really focused on volume. I think the volume training and climbing and skill acquisition is going to be the most important for you, as opposed to really projecting hard on the board, especially since you just came back from a break. You want to get your tendons and ligaments and body just used to that stimulus again. I would do that for about like a month or so, like 3 to 4 weeks of steady volume and increasing that intensity over time. And then once you've been accustomed to that, you have a good routine with you doing this once or twice a week for a month, then you can start thinking about projecting, would be my recommendation.
Now we're going to look at a different use case in me, a climber with a consistent gym climbing history but who's definitely neglected boards as part of the overall weekly volume.
You're a much different case than KJ. Because you have been climbing consistently and you climb in the gym about 4 to 5 times a week. So I would say building volume on a board is important, but maybe not for as long as I would recommend, KJ. Okay. So building the skill and hold familiarity with the board, I think is important. So going through the different tiers of difficulties is, I think, going to be important still. And then once you find where you're starting to feel pushed, where you're starting to reach your limit, I think you can start incorporating projecting a little sooner than
Okay.
than her. Because you have that background of climbing, I think we can start off at 30 degrees. Most boards usually have their board set at 40, but I think 30 will be a good spot for us to start.
I agree. I like the look of this angle.
How I would recommend going about starting your session is going at a warm-up level, and then progressively going down the difficulties, and then, like I mentioned earlier, finding a point where, okay, I'm starting to feel a perceived exertion of about a 7 or 8, and that's going to tell out of 10, and that's going to tell us, okay, this is where we're maybe starting to get pushed out of our comfort zone, and it's going to be the sweet spot for learning new skills and gaining strength.
This is a V3. Did I pick a V3?
Yeah, this is V3.
I think it's a V3.
Called Endearing. No matching.
No. Before we get into discussion of this climb, editing Hannah here to say that you might have noticed that in this session I'm wearing a different shoe to my usual Drone CS. This was my first session with the Shark 3.0 from Madrock. I didn't think anything could turn my head from the Drone CS's, but if you're looking for a slightly softer, high volume shoe, I've found it. I've actually largely switched to these for indoor sessions, and Madrock also just released the Shark 3.0 low volume version. So if you have any questions about the Sharks or the Drone CS's, ask away, and there's also a code here for free shipping. Okay, so let's break down the first climb. So we talked just now about how I tend to prefer static climbing, and I think already in this, I'm finding myself like using a little bit more momentum than I perhaps would have expected.
I've definitely noticed you using momentum and having that momentum carry onto the holds, even in how you're positioning yourself for the next moves as well. So yeah, really nice work on focusing on that and allowing yourself to swing through more dynamically. Let's start to ramp that up slowly. Maybe find one that is about like a 6 or 7, and then eventually we'll get to that 8, 9 range where that sweet spot where we can start projecting.
Okay. No matching.
Great question. No matching, yeah.
I'm not sure how much matching would help.
Nice. Very good. Nice. Yep, come on. Nice, come on here.
Oh no.
Come on. No. You got it. Yeah. Come on.
Oh, where are my feet gone?
High left foot, right by your left hand. There it is. Very good. Yeah. Nice. With the stylish
That was a panic.
finish.
A panic flail.
Nice job. That was great.
But luckily that hold was good. I have spotted that there is one of the Top Dog competition boulders that's sitting at, I think it's a 60 plus or a V5, which is probably where I would put like my upper limit. So I think it would be cool to work towards, like perhaps that could be my 80% boulder that we could give a good shot.
Yeah.
And if you do it, I believe you get on the board of fame. Is that right?
You do, yeah. It's going to be a book now.
Oh, okay.
Spin the wheel, get a prize, and then you enter it.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so the stakes are high. I feel like the foot on the like purple, I don't feel like I'm getting any in. I feel like I'm just pushing myself. I need to figure out, I dropped the top because of like a weird foot placement. I don't feel secure in the foot at all. So, we'll see. I really liked the start though. This move was really cool. I'm feeling the pressure now.
You right? Whoa. Did I do? Oh no. The first one was a bad idea.
That was closer. Yeah, so I often film people on the board as well as myself when I'm sessioning, just because you sometimes don't catch what's actually happening unless you have it recorded, and it really gives you that fine attention to detail. So yeah, so when I caught you on this, we gave you 3 options that you came up with, right? And so you found the Goldilocks option, and I think you mentioned wanting to commit to a certain one. So do you remember which one that was?
I think it was the high foot option, like the closest in, highest foot.
Gotcha.
So I could get feel more like dug in to the board, I think, rather than the wider, slightly more like core tension dependent foothold.
Yeah, for sure. Because when you're like in this really extended position, you might not feel as much leverage, but when it's a little bit closer, you can engage the bigger muscle groups. Awesome. So let's see and visualize what's happening here, and then see if we can make that adjustment. So you went from a toe into a heel, didn't like the heel, so then you tried this position with the closer foot, and you held that position for a good second here. So how are you going to, what are you going to focus on this try to be able to come in and finish that off?
It looks like in the second that I did manage to hold it, my right arm was not heading towards the hold at all. I don't know if maybe I'd have more chance of holding the hold if my hand was near the hold.
Absolutely.
And then also I think that you can see, I don't know, maybe if it's the shoulder that goes first, but there's a bit of a kind of sag in the, like a kind of
the
sag
torso.
out.
Yeah. Cool. So you mentioned a couple things there. Really trying to go for the match, 100% committing to the move, and then trying to keep the torso sucked into the wall as you're coming in for the match. So let's try and focus on those 2 things as you're coming in, and then give that a good effort. Nice, Anna. Really good. Nice. Good. Come on. Yeah. Good. Come on. Yep. Tension. Keep it. Oh. Good try. Oh man, that was so close. You like committed to the move.
I feel like I got into the foot a lot better.
Yeah.
My arms still just kind of came down beside my side.
Gotcha.
But I think on that go, by about a move in, I think the inner monologue was like, you feel really fatigued. You feel really tired, like this probably isn't going to be the go.
Gotcha.
So I think I'd kind of lost my focus and my belief really early on.
Gotcha.
So I don't know if the fight was 100% there.
Yeah. And that is part of the battle, with the process of trying to battle with that inner monologue of feeling like you're giving it 100% as you're making your way through. I would say oftentimes climbers have that monologue in them, and all it takes is that little bit of extra confidence, and somehow they're sticking the hold when they thought they should have been off several moves before. But yeah, I think that was nice that we were actually able to like feel like we were like coming into the move now. We made progress going into that. And then you did keep a little bit more tension on the right foot as well.
Yeah, it felt a lot, in lots of ways it felt better.
Yeah.
The move, that isolated move felt better,
Yeah.
but the rest of it felt worse.
Yeah.
So by the time I got to the move,
it's like powered down
Yeah.
almost. Okay.
I think
awesome.
so.
Yeah, I think there's a couple different things that I would recommend for troubleshooting specific like trouble singular moves. So that could be just adding an extra hold to come in and just build up the muscle memory or even the strength to come in and match. I would also potentially add in the breath work as you're climbing through to help with that, having the mental clarity as you're going through. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of different things. I wouldn't count yourself out on this one, and perhaps a little bit more rest going into it. There are some objective ways of measuring like how much finger strength you have left and how much power you have left, but some of us don't have those fancy tools. So a lot of it is based off of feeling. And so for a majority of climbers, I think the best way to like feel like, okay, I should probably cut this session is when you do moves that typically feel easy for you, that feel like they're starting to take a higher percentage of effort than they normally do. So once you're starting to feel that, then I would consider, okay, you're out of power. We might be putting our body in more compromised positions. And so it's best to just rest and then come back at it fresh.
So I think with listening to your body in mind, I think in my first few attempts on this boulder in particular, I felt really smooth through the beginning section. And on that go, I felt fatigued. So I think we're going to wrap the board session there. I'll leave Christian's information in the description of this video or on screen here, but do go check him out. And if you're in the LA area and are in the market for some in-person coaching, then hit you up. He can get you up your board projects.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
I think we've covered in this video that board climbing really is for everybody. You don't have to be at a certain level to start board climbing, but of course watch out for injuries and overtraining because board climbing can be pretty intensive. If you've not tried board climbing before but you've been kind of curious, then I hope that this video has equipped you with some knowledge or at least some curiosity to get started. Hopefully one of these use cases will apply to you and you can take the session structures that we covered here as a starting point to help you figure out how the board can become a helpful training tool for you too.